I got this diesel heater about 6 months ago to keep me warm as I was living in my van during the winter time in Lake Tahoe, California. And it was pretty cold. It would get down to 10 degrees sometimes, maybe even colder. And I used this diesel heater every day to keep me warm. In today's video, I'm going to be breaking down everything that you need to know about the Vevor diesel heater. We're going to be going over everything from setting it up, how it performs, and I'm also going to be sharing my real world experience using it over the winter time. So let's dive into the video. Alright, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, this is Camping with Shane. And in today's video, we're going to be doing a review of the Vevor 8 kilowatt diesel heater that I've been using for the past about 6 months now. So I have the all-in-one unit. So all I had to do was run the exhaust, run the intake, and then power it up, hook it up to some power. Now there's also another model, like the do-it-yourself version. It's kind of in pieces, so you get everything separate, so you have to set it up yourself. But there's some pros and cons to both of those, so we're going to get into that right now. So starting out with the all-in-one, the one that I went with, I absolutely love it because it was super easy to set up. All I had to do, like I said, was hook up the exhaust, hook up the intake, and then just hook it up to some power, and then just add some diesel, and it was working perfectly fine. But there is a little bit of a drawback to the all-in-one unit. You know, it is a little bit bigger because everything is all-in-one. It's just one box. And it can be a little bit harder to fill up your diesel tank if you have it inside your van. I had mine mounted under my little bench area, and I had to use a funnel to fill it up every day, which was a little bit annoying, but it wasn't a big deal because I'd rather have to do that than not have heat. It's pretty simple. But you know, I could have chose a better location, but I kind of did it without thinking about filling it up. So you want to think about that if you're using the all-in-one unit. You want to think about where you're going to put it because, you know, if you're living in the cold, you're going to be using it every day. The other thing with the all-in-one unit is it doesn't come with a super big tank. You know, mine is a 1.3 gallon tank, which is good if you're not using it like the whole night, you know, because I would run my diesel heater for the whole night, you know, probably 12, 14 hours at a time. And I was able to do it off that one tank, but I would have to refill it every day. So that was a little bit annoying, but you know, like I said before, I'd rather do that than not have heat. So those are a couple things with the all-in-one unit. But the other nice part with the all-in-one unit is it's kind of portable. If you're not using it in your van, you can use it in your garage. You can use it when you're camping in a tent. You know, you can set it up outside and then duct it into the tent. So that is one super nice thing with the all-in-one unit. And also, if you're not living in a super cold environment and you just want to have heat to be able to, you know, run your heater for a little bit at night, maybe a little bit in the morning, that 1.3 gallon tank, it'll last you a couple of days. So, all right, now let's talk about the diesel heater that kind of comes in pieces that you put together yourself. So it is super nice because it's a little more customizable and it doesn't take up as much space like the all-in-one unit because everything is separate. You know, the heater unit is separate, and that's pretty much the only thing you're going to be having inside. You know, everything else is going to be around, like your fuel filter, your fuel pump, you know, your gas tank. The other thing about the DIY version is you can put the gas tank on the outside and you can put a bigger gas tank. So that's super nice, especially, you know, if you're looking to go a couple days, you know, using it, because you can just fill it up right at the gas pump. Super easy. Have the gas, you know, tank on the outside. You can also put the gas tank on the inside, so, you know, somewhere easily fill upable. So it is nice for if you're living full time in your van and you want just, you know, to save some space and be able to have a good amount of diesel in the tank ready to go at all times. Now, I don't personally have that unit, so I don't know too much about it, but I would actually like to get one for my next build because it will just take up a lot less space, and I'll be able to put the fuel tank on the outside and then, you know, put a bigger tank. And it is just nice, but it can be a little bit harder to, you know, to do maintenance on them because if everything is in different locations, you know, you got to make sure that you're able to access those, like your fuel pump, your fuel filter, just, you know, everything, like your wiring, just in case. You're going to want to be able to access those things, but with the all-in-one unit, I know it's just all right there, so if I do have to fix something, then it's just easy to open it up and check it out. So, and with the do-it-yourself version, once you put it in, it's going to be a lot harder to move it because you got your wire going, your fuel lines, your fuel tank, everything is going to have to move if you want to move the heater itself. With the all-in-one, all you have to do is unplug it, and then you can move it. So really think about what you want it for, what you're going to be using it for. And these units come in at about $90, $96, and you can also get Bluetooth, which I did not get. I kind of wish I got the Bluetooth. Both of these units come with a remote though, which is super nice, because when I was in bed, I'm able to turn on and off the heater from bed without having to get up and turn it up or down. So it's super nice having the remote. But I am curious on what the Bluetooth would be like. But I figure the remote's good enough. All you really need to do is turn it on and off or up or down. So they do make Bluetooth if you want to get a Bluetooth one. All right, so now let's talk about like how much power the diesel heater uses. How much fuel it uses. I think we already went over a little bit of the fuel, but we're just going to go over it again. Now we're going to go over the different models. There's 2 kilowatt, there's 5 kilowatt, and there's 8 kilowatt. If you're thinking to yourself, what does that mean? It pretty much means more power. I have the 8 kilowatt, so it produces it has the most power. You can produce the most heat. So if you have a bigger area, you're going to want to go with the 8 kilowatt. If you have a smaller area, a smaller van, you could probably get away with going. I could probably get away with going with the 5 kilowatt. But yeah, you can use the 5 kilowatt, 2 kilowatt. I would recommend a 2 kilowatt for if you have a minivan, not if you have a big van, because I know those they don't, it's not going to heat up a big van as well as like the 8 kilowatt does. Because when I use my diesel heater, even when it's like 20 degrees outside, I typically don't go above level 3 of 10. So, and when I leave it on overnight, I use it on level 1. So, and it's still, level 1 will keep the van about 50-55 degrees when it's about 20 degrees out. So, and that's perfect for me for sleeping. I don't like it too hot. And then it really doesn't use too much fuel, because the lower kilowatt one you have, the less fuel it will use. So my 8 kilowatt, it burns through, I can burn through a whole 1.3 gallon tank in a day pretty much. But if you have a 5 kilowatt or a 2 kilowatt, you're probably not going to be burning through that much fuel. So I'm thinking about, I might get the 5 kilowatt not all-in-one, the do-it-yourself version, and then install that in the next build, but we'll see. I might just take apart mine and then do it, because I heard you can do that. So, all right, and then as for power consumption, the minimum power you're going to need is 15 amps, because it has a 15 amp fuse coming off of the all-in-one, at least the one that I had. So you're going to need, at least, or at most 15 amps, but you're going to want at least 15 amps as well, just in case it has to use that power. It only really uses a lot of power when it's initially heating up. Once it's going, it barely uses any power. But I first tried to run it off of this power station, and this only has a 10 amp plug, and I thought, oh, it might work, because I know it doesn't use a lot when it's running, but it didn't give it enough power to get up to temperature. So you're going to need at least a 15 amp power source, so it draws about 150 watts when it's heating up, but that only takes a couple of minutes, and then once it's going, it pulls maybe like 30 or 40 watts, so it's really not bad. I have a 100 amp hour battery in my van running it, and I'm able to run it for multiple nights in a row without having to charge the battery. So it's super energy efficient and super fuel efficient if you have like the lower kilowatt models. I mean, the 8 kilowatt, that's still not bad. A gallon of diesel per day pretty much to keep the van warm. So, and that's only if you're running it the whole night. If you're just running it for a couple hours every day, you can make a tank last for a long time. And this obviously is a cheaper model, like a cheaper unit. You can buy like a nice expensive model for like $1,000, but that's 10x the price, and there's really not much difference. One major thing about this unit is it does have a little bit of a clicking sound for the fuel pump, which it's really not a big deal. It's not super loud. You do hear it a little bit, but you can put the muffler on, which helps a ton. But I honestly kind of like it, because I know if I'm hearing that noise, then the heater is working. Because there's only one time where the heater actually stopped working for me, and it was more my fault. It ran out of fuel during the night because I didn't put in enough. I thought it was going to be okay, and that was the only time that it like failed on me, because I woke up and it was like 20 degrees in the van, and then I was trying to turn the heater on because I didn't hear the clicking. I was like, what's going on? It's cold. And then when I was in bed, half asleep, I thought it was saying check oil. And I was like, check oil, but it was saying check fuel because it didn't have any fuel. So that was the only time that it gave me a problem, and it was my fault. So let's go over the pros and cons of each unit now. We got the all-in-one, and then we got the do-it-yourself model. So the pros of the all-in-one is it's super easy to set up. Also, it is portable, so you can use it, in different areas. You can just take it with you. You can use it while you're camping in a tent. You can use it in like a rooftop tent. You can use it in your car. You can put it on the outside of your car if you're camping in your car. Feed it through the window. There's multiple uses for the all-in-one unit. It is super awesome. But some of the cons, if you're living in a van, it does take up a lot more space, and it can be a little harder to fill up, and it does have that smaller fuel tank. So those are really the only cons that I have for it, because it is a great unit. And then for the do-it-yourself version, some of the pros are, it takes up less space, that just the heater itself really doesn't take up a lot of space. And then also it's more customizable, so you can have your screen that controls it, mounted somewhere like on your, above your countertop, and then you can have the fuel tank on the outside, have a bigger tank, route the electricity. It's really nice to be able to save space and add more capacity. But the cons is, it's a little bit harder to set up, because you got to hook everything up, and you got to hope that you hooked it up right. So that's what I do like about the all-in-one. It's just super easy to just plug and play. And then the maintenance, it's going to be a little harder to maintain, or it could be easier to maintain, depending on where you put everything. Your fuel filter, your fuel pump, your tank, your fuel lines, your electricity. You can put it in really accessible spots where you won't have a problem if you need to change your fuel filter or change your fuel pump or something. So, all right, now that we have gone over the Vevor diesel heater, we've gone over the all-in-one and the do-it-yourself version, it's time to go over, my overall experience using the unit. So like I said, I was living in my van in Lake Tahoe for about 4 months, with this unit being pretty much my only source of heat. And I used it every night, the whole night. I would use it on the lowest setting, but it would, kept it about 50-55 degrees in there. And then when I woke up in the morning, I was able to just take the remote. I would crank it up to about 5 or 6 till I really warm it up in the van. So then when I got out of bed, it was nice and warm in there. And I was living in Lake Tahoe in the snow, where it was constantly below freezing. So, and that heater was doing work. And then I was also camping, in some places that wasn't, freezing, where it would only get down to like 40 degrees at night. And then I wouldn't even use the heater the whole night. I would just turn it on before bed and then warm up the place and then turn it off. Because if I left it running all night, it would just get way too hot in there. Like one time I accidentally got it to like 80 degrees in the van, and I was like, oh my gosh, it is hot. So yeah, it works great. And pretty much, even if you're in the freezing cold weather, or you just want to, warm up your van a little bit. Because I know when I camp in the mountains a lot, or in the desert, it does get pretty cold at night. And my friends who are sleeping in their tents and everything, they're always, having a bunch of blankets, bunch of sleeping bags, always, oh, it's so cold. And I'm just nice and warm in the van. So yeah, I absolutely love it. I haven't had any problems with it. It was super easy to set up. I have the all-in-one. I'm curious about the do-it-yourself one. It's probably not too hard. You just gotta, there's probably some YouTube videos out there, walking you step by step. I'll probably make one if I end up installing one. So yeah, so overall, I loved it. It worked great. It did what it was supposed to. It's cheap, and yeah, it doesn't use a lot of power. So I would totally recommend the Vevor diesel heater to anyone out there looking to get a nice diesel heater, because if you can't really use like a regular space heater that you would use in your house in a van, because they pull like 1,500 watts of power, and even if you have a pretty big power bank, that'll drain it down super fast. And yeah, it just takes way too much power. So get yourself a diesel heater if you're looking to get one. And I also have a video installing my diesel heater. So I'll link that in the description, or just check it out on my channel. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. And yeah, leave a like and a comment. Let me know what you think. And we'll see you in the next video.